These many years afterwards, 3 of them sitting here today in Sioux County. That says a lot to me about the level of patriotism that you have here. And it ties back and hits me in the heart in a special way. Because for me, everything has to be personalized for us. That's what we do. We think about it between our own experiences. My my grandmother came over from Germany, and so she was and she raised 6 sons and a daughter. And they were timed just right to be World War II veterans. The oldest son was physically unable to serve. The next 5 put on the uniform. My father put on the Navy uniform, went to the South Pacific for 2.5 years, and those other boys went back to Europe to fight against the fatherland. And so when I look at Herman's record, and I really was focused on the map of where he gave his life for our freedom, and that place on the map just there east and south of Bastogne, the town of Dillingen, that is 35 miles, roughly speaking, from where my Uncle Everett nearly lost a leg. And so when I look at Europe, and I go over there from time to time, it's important for us to hold our relationships together. I go to those places, I stand on that land, and I reflect about the blood that has soaked that soil. And I know that some of the blood from my family that shares my DNA, and certainly it's the blood that you shared with your brother. And the meaning of this, I think, has been understated in our history. Just about a month ago, the early part of October, a month and a week ago, I had a mission to do in France, and I made sure that I finally went to Normandy. And so it's very fresh in my mind to walk down there on that beach at Omaha Beach, where I presume that Herman landed on Omaha Beach, I don't know, and to stand there and bring back a Ziploc bag of the sand from Omaha Beach, bring back a couple of rocks from that beach that he may well have stepped on when he climbed aboard and came on shore at Normandy. And I stand there and I look at that memorial, and I say a prayer for all of our troops that laid down their lives. Americans laid down their lives in a foreign country by the tens of thousands to free people from dictatorship, from despotism, from Nazism, from fascism, and from communism in the end. And today, there would be no freedom in the world if it hadn't been for the sacrifices of people like Herman. And so I stand there and reflect on that, and I thank God that he raised up noble warriors to defend our liberty and caused them to have the inspiration to go ashore in some of the most fearsome places. And it's only been 5 weeks since I stood atop at the Point du Hoc, where Ronald Reagan gave his famous speech in 1984. And it was on June 6th of 1984 when Reagan spoke of the boys of Point du Hoc, the Rangers that climbed that cliff there. To stand on top of that cliff and think, they fired grapples up to the top of a cliff, roughly 125 or 50 feet up. And they didn't know what they were going to face up there. They threw their weapon over their back and climbed a rope ladder into the face of what they had to expect was almost certain death. And it was for a majority of them. But they took those pillboxes up there at Point du Hoc, and they went back into the countryside and began to fight hedgerow to hedgerow, which Herman did, all the way to Bastogne and beyond. And when I look at the calendar and I hear the reports that he lost his life at the beginning of the Battle of the Bulge, when Hitler launched that assault of the Battle of the Bulge to break through our lines and do the end run around our Americans and try to get to Antwerp and control the port and to encircle our armies and force a surrender. We know what Hitler did when he forced a surrender. He did it to the Russians. He starved them to death and marched them off through the snow to Siberia. That would have been what would have been in store if Americans didn't stand at Bastogne and do what they did. And I also have, it isn't always in favor of everybody in this county, but I have a shot glass in my kitchen. And it sits up there in the cupboard, and I brought it from Bastogne, and it says one word on it: nuts. Remember Colonel McAuliffe that said, the Germans said, we demand that you surrender, you have no chance, and his one answer was nuts. Nothing better to express the American attitude than those 4 letters in that simple word. It's a 4-letter word I like, and I don't like any others that I can think of. But the spirit of that, to go and stand on that land at Bastogne and go up on top of the Army Memorial that's there, to the points of the 5 stars outside of Bastogne, where you can stand there and walk out to that point, and you can read the order of battle and the action that took place, looking off in this direction. Then you turn that a fifth of the circle, and then you can look out in that direction and see the order of battle. And the next 5 points. And there are 9 panels that I count, and that memorial at Bastogne. And the 9 panels there will tell you what happened. And to stand there and read that, and to understand the great human sacrifice that took a stand there at Bastogne in the Battle of the Bulge, and to understand that sacrifice and feel that in that place. And then we went down into the town of Bastogne, and they have a memorial there, a museum. It's built in an old building. It's put in an old building. It's 3 stories tall, and you go up the stairs, and there are original uniforms there. They borrowed these uniforms to film Saving Private Ryan. The very uniforms that they use in some of the scenes in Saving Private Ryan are right there in Bastogne. And you can walk up and down and look at these displays and get a real feel for what Herman went through, what he had to put through for sacrifice. And I think that from the time they landed at Normandy on June 6, 1944, until he gave his life on December 15, 1944, I know those units were in constant combat. They didn't get to sit back and go back to the rear and get R&R. They were in constant combat, they were in constant peril, and they were under constant fire. And they were fought hedgerow to hedgerow. It's a long ways from Normandy to Bastogne. And in that Bastogne Museum, and it's for the 101st, is primarily the 101st. But as we walked through there, and it was, by the way, it was Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann from Minnesota and myself that were in there, and she adds an extra bit of observation and sensitivity to me, and I appreciate her for that and other things. But there were 3 people that were walking around looking at these displays. They had ridden in on Harleys, and they were wearing Harley vests and that. They were about my age, and we didn't talk to them in the museum, even though we were walking around each other. But when we got outside, they walked up to us. There were 2 from the Netherlands and 1 from Belgium. And they walked up to us and started a conversation, and they were speaking English, and they said that they were riding their Harleys from Normandy, following the Allied troops from Normandy to Bastogne and on to Berlin. And they talked to us about those stops they got to make along the way. And one of them said to me, thank you, America. Thank you, America, because of what you did to come in and save us. We, being my generation, we are the first generation that didn't have to go to war. And now we're 70 years into that. The peace that was forged by your service and sacrifice, gentlemen, your brother's ultimate sacrifice, that's not only America that's free, but there is freedom in the world that would not exist. And I want our young people to know that when they study history, if they leave that part out about what peril America was in the Second World War, plug that in. We need to plug that in so that they know. We were in a 2-front war. We were fighting 3 ideologies. Radical Japanese imperialism, which could have washed over us from the West, and German Nazism, and Italian fascism, which could have washed over us from the East. And if we don't succeed in the Second World War, and it was in doubt. It was in doubt even not only after the landing in Normandy, it was in doubt after the battle of the Bulge, where Herman gave his life. It was in doubt well after that. If you remember, it was February 11th, 1945, when they had Yalta, and that was when Stalin and Churchill and Roosevelt met in Crimea, and they decided, here's the line that we're going to draw across Europe. If we win the war, the people on the west side of the line will live free, the people on the east side of the line will live as communists. That was the deal that was made then, so the victory was not known in February of 1945. And it certainly wasn't known on December 15th, when Herman gave his life, December 15th of 1944. But he selflessly assaulted a pillbox and took out a number of the enemy to knock out that gun. And shortly after that, he was killed in that action. But he saved lives when he did that. He saved American lives when he did that. Those sacrifices, had they not been made, we might be speaking a different language today. living under a different kind of a government, not having had the privilege to vote last Tuesday or direct our own country to serve us, we would, if we lose that war, we're no longer we the people. And we have so many hundreds of thousands of Americans who have laid down their lives through the centuries, from the Revolutionary War to the War of 1812, the Civil War, the Spanish-American War, World Wars I and II, and Korea and Vietnam, and our conflicts today. Each one of them build on that legacy. It's always been worth the sacrifice. It's been worth the sacrifice because we've stepped up and we have lived by that message that came from them, from their graves, which is really exemplified in the last scene of Saving Private Ryan, where he said, "Tell me, did I live a good life?" If we live good lives, and we live and exercise the freedoms that we have, we do honor to those who have gone before us. And those who went before us, I remember from that panel outside the memorial at Bastogne, and Herman would be one of the people who was honored in this. There were over 176,000 casualties in that Battle of the Bulge altogether. My Uncle Everett, Herman, many others, 176,000 Allied casualties. And I've gone to the cemetery near there where I expect that's where he buried. I don't know, but I want to find that out. And gone there to honor those that have fallen at the cemetery, the Ardennes Cemetery near Bastogne, and also to the cemetery in Normandy just a little over a month ago, where I laid a wreath, and we had the national anthem and played taps to honor the troops that are buried there. And when you see that, when you see the sun glistening off of those over 9,000 crosses there in Normandy, and however many there are in the cemetery in Ardennes, you see what kind of an awesome sacrifice has been made. And all Americans ever asked for was enough land upon which to bury our dead, and ask them to honor their sacrifice by living their lives free. And this day, this November 11th, that honors really, as this day is chosen because it's the end of World War, the end of World War I, on the 11th month, on the 11th hour of the 11th day. And that's where we stand today. This day that we can't match this up again. It's perfect. This is 11/11/11. This is Veterans Day. We're doing honor to a tremendous veteran who gave his life so long ago, and also honor to his brothers who took an honor flight to be out there to finally see what America built, to honor and respect the effort that all of you have provided, and especially here, the brothers. So I want to make sure I didn't forget anything, because that's what my notes were for. I do want to just hit some of the facts so that they go into the record, but I think I covered most of it. But Herman Theodore Vander Laan was born June 28, 1918, and served in the U.S. Army from April 2nd of 42 until December 15th of 1944, when he was killed in action. Before his death, Herman was fortunate to meet his brother Marion in England. That's Bud, was serving in the Army Air Corps at the time. Herman served his training at Camp Barkley, Texas, and in the California desert. He went overseas in 44, and his regiment landed on the Normandy beach on H hour. That's after D-Day, and after D-Day, he served in combat in Patton's 3rd Army, which is where my uncle was. They were in the same army together, until his death. His wife, Marcia, was a WAC private at the time of his death. Herman was a first lieutenant in the 90th Division. On the day he was killed, he crawled to within 20 feet of an enemy pillbox. That's close range, 20 feet. He killed the machine gun crew with his carbine, and he was mortally wounded, but afterward, the fortification was captured with a minimum of casualties. He was awarded the Silver Star and other medals posthumously in 1945 from the 90th Infantry Division, and his widow Marcia has kept the Silver Star. There were no children, and she remarried, so the location of the Silver Star is unknown. The surviving brothers are here, and they requested that their brother Herman's award be replaced while they're here with us to celebrate this day and his life. And survivors are here and seated at the front table. That's Marion and his wife, Dorothea. Dorothea, and his brother Harold, and then his brother Clarence. And so all the brothers are World War II vets and all live at Pioneer Memorial Home in Orange City. And I'm going to ask Zach, thank you. This is kind of I need 3 arms right now, but I want to show the crowd this. This is Herman's Silver Star, and that is, I believe, the second highest award and honor for heroism and bravery that we offer. And it is a tremendous thing that commemorates the absolute bravery that he demonstrated on that day, which was the last day of his life, but also was part of the beginning, a new beginning of freedom for the United States of America. And I present this to Herman's brothers, and I ask that you, I know that you will keep this, you'll honor this, and it will be a legacy of Herman's life. God bless him and his memory, and everyone who has served the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Good evening, I'm Sheila Bremer. Thanks for joining us on this Veterans Day. Today, Congressman Steve King awarded a fallen Siouxland soldier the Silver Star. The soldier's 3 brothers gathered today to honor him. KTV's Jarrett Lansford has their story from Sioux Center, Iowa.
The 4 Vander Laan brothers, Herman, Bud, Clarence, and Harold, all served in World War II, but had unique experiences associated with the war. Herman, the oldest brother, became the first in the military when he enlisted in the Army. Not long after his brother Bud visited Herman at basic training, he decided to enlist as well. Herman had a suggestion for Bud.
Whatever you do, he says, stay out of the infantry. I guess he figured I wasn't quite as big a person as he was and wouldn't be able to take the training.
So Bud enlisted in the Air Corps later in 1942. The next brother, Clarence, was drafted in 1943. His service was spent in the U.S.
They shipped me down to Camp White, Oregon, which is way down southern part of Oregon. And that's where I worked in the message center down there.
Herman and Bud both ended up overseas in Europe. Communication between the brothers, especially with Herman, was difficult due to his unit's heavy fighting.
He said that they had spent 47 days in the trenches before even having a shower.
But they were sure to keep in touch with each other.
I always knew where they were. I kept corresponding with them.
The heavy fighting eventually took Herman's life in December of 1944. After this, his brother Harold was drafted to the Navy.
A year later is when I was turned 18 and was still subject to the draft. So that's when I began my Navy service.
Their experiences in the war changed the relationship the brothers had for the rest of their lives.
Probably drew us closer together, you know. Yeah. There was several years there we never saw much of each other.
From Sioux Center, Iowa, Jarrett Lansford, KTIV News 4.